All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for Sharks4Kids' first Google Hangout. We're very excited to have you join us today. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'm Director of Education with Sharks4Kids. And my special guest today is marine biologist and founding member of Sharks4Kids, Dr. Derek Burkeholder. So, hi, Derek. How are you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. Great to be here.
All right.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, awesome. So some viewing today may not already be familiar with Sharks4Kids, and a few of you may have already had the jawsome experience of a lesson with Derek and Jillian. But for those who aren't aware, the goal of Sharks4Kids is to create a new generation of shark advocates by empowering and encouraging students to speak up because they can use their voices to make a difference. So sharks play a critical role in protecting the balance of our ocean ecosystems, but despite this importance, their population numbers are being decimated. So roughly 75 to 100 million sharks are removed from our oceans each year. Throw in the fact that they have the man-eating stereotype, and sharks are struggling to survive right now. So it's up for us to do something to look out for them, to help protect them. So Sharks4Kids, we have a variety of curriculum materials, games, activities, and interviews with scientists, videos, pictures, and information posters. You can check those out at sharks4kids.com, and there's lots more coming. 2015 is going to be a fantastic year for Sharks4Kids. As well, for those new to Google+, if you check out the showcase bar on the side and click on it, you can see a series of links on the side. You can check out our YouTube page, our website. There's a link to a really cool shark tracking site that Derek works with. So please do take a moment, check that out. Follow us on Twitter and YouTube and keep up to date with all the news. I'm going to take a moment now to welcome our classes who are joining us live today. So I'm going to start off with Kalani High School in Honolulu. They're a 9th grade physical science class. Say hi, guys. Hi. All right. Then we have 2 grade 1 classes at Nellie McClung Public School, and they're in Vaughan, Ontario, Canada. So say hi, guys. Hi. All right, excited to have you join us today. Then from Wyoming, we have from Rollins, Wyoming, we've got the Super Shark Savers.
Hello.
Say hi, guys.
Say hello. Hello!
All right, thanks for joining us. So we're excited to get to your questions today. Those viewing along, watching the live stream, please feel free to put questions in the chat bar, and we'll do our best to get to some of those questions as well. And we're also trying to keep track of who's joining us today. So please, either on the event page or in the chat bar, say hi. Let us know who and where you are and how many people are with your group today. Okay, so without any further delay, I'm going to introduce Dr. Derek. So Dr. Derek Burkeholder, he received his PhD from Florida International University in 2012, and he's working as a research scientist as part of the Guy Harvey Research Institute and Save Our Seas Shark Center at Nova Southeastern University. And his work focuses on building a local shark tagging program in South Florida, and he's studying shark movements, their diets, and their population structures. So he also provides opportunities for local people as well as students to join into the research and participate in the field. So Dr. Derek, I'm going to turn it over to you. You take over.
All right, sounds great. Thank you so much, Joe. And thank you all for joining us today. We're very, very excited about this first Google Hangouts. We're very happy to have so many of you along for the show today, and I definitely look forward to hearing some of your questions in a little bit. So to start off, I'd just like to, like Joe said, my name is Derek Burkeholder, and I've been studying sharks for a little over 10 years now. I actually grew up in Michigan, so a long way from the oceans. But I was very, very lucky to have a teacher that worked with sharks at the small school that I went to in Michigan. And I've been very, very lucky to be able to move down to Florida and actually travel all over the world, from Florida to the Bahamas and all the way across the other side of the world to Australia to study sharks and other marine life. So today I want to tell you a little bit about some of the research that I do, how we do it, why we care, and some of the things we're trying to learn with this kind of these techniques and things like that. So we'll definitely have a lot of time at the end, so please store any questions till then. Just give me just a second. I'm going to share my screen here so I can have some photos and things for you to see. All right. Can everybody see that all right?
Looks good on this end.
All right. Sounds great. So as Joe said, Sharks4Kids, we're very, very happy that everybody's out today and excited to talk to you about sharks. And hopefully you can check out our website, Sharks4Kids.com, to learn a little bit more about these amazing animals. Currently, I'm working at Nova Southeastern University with the Harvey Research Institute and Save Our Seas Shark Center. Both of these groups study sharks and other billfish and things like that, but they do it in a little bit of a different way. Harvey Research Institute primarily focuses on research out in the field, which means we go out on boats, we catch sharks, and we're going to talk about some of the tagging work and things that we do with them. The Save Our Seas Shark Center also studies sharks and other marine animals, but focuses primarily on using genetic techniques. So we're answering similar questions, but going about it very, very different ways. So it's very exciting to be able to bring these two together to learn a lot about sharks and these other animals. So just very, very quickly, why do we even care about sharks? Why do we care about the oceans? Our oceans cover over 70% of the Earth's surface. And so to have a healthy planet, we have to have healthy oceans. It's estimated that about 50 to 60% of all living species actually live in our oceans. So if you think of any bird and plant and animal, insect, anything you can think of on land, there's that many and even more that are living in our oceans. We get about half of the oxygen or the air that we breathe is made by ocean plants. We also get a lot of food and other resources out of the oceans as well. But unfortunately, in doing all that, we've kind of created a few problems for ourselves. Our oceans are having some troubles. Like I said, we get a lot of great things out of the oceans, but by doing that, we've created some issues as well. Unfortunately, some of the animals that I'm working with, things like the sea turtles and specifically sharks, are not doing all that well. It's estimated, Joe said right there at the beginning, that about 100 million sharks get killed every single year by people around the world. So 100 million sharks are being killed. And unfortunately, sharks are very slow growing. They don't have very many babies at a time. And so when you're taking that many of them out of the water, it's almost impossible for them to keep up. And so a lot of species are not doing very well. And it's, about 25% of all elasmobranchs, which are the sharks, skates, and rays, 25% of those are endangered or critically endangered right now. So it's very, very important for us to learn a little bit more about these animals so we can hopefully help protect them. So when we want to talk about protecting an animal, there's some few very, very basic things that we have to learn to know where we can do the most good. And one of the things we need to know is, where do they go? Where do animals go to eat? Where do they go to reproduce? There's about 500 different species of sharks out there right now, and some of those sharks we don't even know what kind of food they eat. So even things as simple as what they eat and where they go, these are things we're still learning a lot about our sharks, and are very, very important to hopefully help protect them a little bit. So one of the coolest parts about my job as a marine biologist and a shark biologist is I get to spend a lot of time on the water, on boats, actually working with these sharks up close and personal. But that's also one of the harder things we do as well. Sharks spend most of their lives, pretty much all their lives, underwater, and so we might be able to see them for a few minutes right next to the boat if we bring them up here, if we're able to catch them, or if we're really lucky and get to go scuba diving with them, we might be able to see them and watch them for maybe an hour or so. But as soon as they swim away, it's very, very difficult to learn more about sharks and really any marine life. And so as scientists, we've had to kind of come up with some new techniques and new ways to learn about sharks and other marine animals. And one of the ways we do that is by tagging and tracking sharks. This is a great tool that allows us to actually get hands-on with the sharks and get an idea of what they're doing. There's lots and lots of different kinds of tags out there, and but pretty much all of them, we first have to start with actually catching that shark. And so we use lots of different kinds of fishing gear. The stuff that we've got pictured right here up at the top is called a drum line. This is about a 50-pound weight that sits on the bottom. There's a float that comes up to the surface, and then there's a great big piece of line and a big hook with a piece of bait on the end of it that'll sit on the bottom. So we'll set out about 10 of these lines in the morning, and then we'll check them every 2 hours throughout the day. All of the stuff that we use is designed to be as healthy for the shark as it can be, because we want to make sure that they go away with their tags and everything else as healthy as possible, because we want to make sure to learn as much as we can. So when we do catch a shark, we'll figure out what kind of shark it is. We'll figure out if it's a boy or a girl. We'll take measurements to see how long it is, and then we're going to put some kind of tag in them. There's lots of different kind of tags. Show you just a quick little video here of kind of what this looks like. Maybe. So this is some of our research in Australia. Sorry, guys.
Then the drum lines are deployed.
So we're going to put this gear out in the water, let it soak for a couple of hours. We never want the sharks to stay very long on the line. And after a couple of hours, we'll come back and hopefully find something like this. A nice, beautiful tiger shark
idle the boat forward to
on
allow
the end
a
of that
steady
line.
stream of water to pass over its gills and collect data. We attach an identification tag to her dorsal fin. If she's recaptured, we'll be able to see how much she grew. 0. Next, we take several measurements of the shark and release the shark.
So we're going to take all those measurements, put the tag in the fin, and when we're all done, take the hook out of its mouth and send him on his way. The kind of tag we put in right there was called a roto tag. It's got a number on one side of the tag and an email and a phone number on the other side of the tag. So if anybody ever catches that shark again, they can call us up, tell us where it was, and by getting these recaptures, we can learn a lot more about what these sharks are doing. But we do have to catch them again. So there's some other kinds of tags we can use that can teach us things without having to catch the shark again. One is called acoustic tagging. This white tag right here at on this bottom picture on the hammerhead, that's an acoustic tag, which means it sends out a beep once a second. As that beeping sound is going, we can actually follow that beep around from the boat and get a really good idea of exactly where those sharks are going. The great thing about working in the oceans is that animals can swim around the globe, but they can also swim up and down because the oceans can be very, very deep. And so we want to know how they move up and down in the water as well. We want to know that for sharks, but also things like turtles, whales, dolphins, all these different animals. We can use this kind of tag called a time depth recorder to be able to figure out where they're going. In this case, this is actually going to get put on a whale. We've got a suction cup right here at the top. And what we're going to do, that's going to hold it on the side of the whale so it doesn't hurt them at all. It just sticks on there just like you stick something to your mirror. You can see they swim around. As that tag holds onto their side, it's going to give it depth once a second that tag is on. Then once we get the tag back, we can see, do they spend a lot of time really deep in the ocean before coming back to the top, or do they take really shallow dives and stay up near the surface? The last kind of tag is something we use a lot with the Harvey Research Institute, and these are called satellite tags. These are an amazing tool that allow us to actually follow these sharks around anywhere they go in the world for a long period of time. So what we can do is, in this video right here, this is actually going to be a pop-off satellite tag. And so the way these work is that little tag right there is going to be put on the shark, and then it's going to store information on the tag for 6 months or maybe a year that we send it out there. It's going to record where the shark goes, how deep it swims, and even the water temperature where it is. And then after that 6 months or a year, the tag will fall off, float up to the top of the water, and send all of that information up to a satellite, and we'll get a notice telling us exactly where that thing has gone. Another kind of satellite tag that we use a lot is called a spot tag. These are ones that get attached right to the fin of the shark, and these are great because they allow us to get almost a real-time look at where these sharks are going, because anytime the shark comes to the surface, and this antenna comes out of the water, it'll send a signal to a satellite, and we'll get a notice telling us exactly where that shark is. And so what we've done is we've actually put together a website where we can actually follow these sharks around, and you guys can follow them from home as well. And so I just want to show you this real quick, and this is in your features link on the side if you want to take a look at this website later on. So this isghritracking.org. And so if we pull this up, the first thing we're going to see is the different kinds of sharks and fish that we've worked with. So we've got Mako sharks, tigers, oceanic whitetips, sand tiger sharks, and then some of the billfish like marlins and sailfish. Down below each of the species, we've got different locations where we've tagged these sharks. So first I want to go to Bermuda. Bermuda's a little tiny island way out here in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And we know that tiger sharks like to hang out there. So we wanted to see if they stay around Bermuda all the time or if they move far away from there. And so just to show you what these tags look like, I'm going to show you one more quick little video.
It's really essential to understand these animals so that that information can be used for better conservation and management measures. So we were out there to tag oceanic whitetip sharks using a special type of tag that sends very accurate positional estimates once the tag is on the shark and when the fin of the shark breaks the surface. That the shark that we tagged with this particular type of position tag spent so much time on the surface that we were able to track it for 5 months, over which time it traveled 900 miles from the tagging site down into the Eastern Caribbean, and much to our surprise, that animal came right back, I mean literally right back to where it was tagged 5 months later, after traveling about 900 miles.
All right, so there you can see that, you know, when we do work with these sharks, like I said, we work very quickly, and also we can do it in a way that they're, you know, as little stress as possible to make sure they're healthy when they leave. If we come over to this side of the screen over here, all these names are sharks that we've tracked in this area. So let's click on, let's say, Harry Lindo here. So we click that gray box, can zoom in a little bit so we can see it a little bit better. And so all of these dots on this map is a place where this shark, this is all from one tiger shark, where this shark came up to the top of the water. We were very, very lucky with this shark. It's one of the longest tracked sharks of any species in the world, and we were able to track this different years where that shark was swimming around. We can actually follow this shark as it was going. And if you look right up here at the top of the screen, we've got a date. And so what happened in 2009, pretty quickly after we tagged it, when it got cold up here in Bermuda, this shark went right down here to the nice warm waters in the Caribbean. It's going to spend some time down there. It's going to spend all winter down there pretty much swimming around. And then as the water starts to warm up, this shark's going to make a big swim way out here into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. This is thousands and thousands of feet of water. There's not really there's no land. We don't know exactly why they're out here. It might be looking for food. Maybe other sharks are out there. We're not really sure. But what's very cool is after a year, that shark makes a big circle back north of Bermuda, and then comes back, and the next year, next winter, is right back down here again in the exact same place it was the year before. What's very cool about this is that if I want to go someplace new, I'm probably going to pull out a map or probably my GPS on my phone, and I'm going to figure out exactly where I am, and it's going to tell me how to go where I want to go. Sharks obviously don't have a map. They don't have a GPS like we would, but you can see this shark is going to the same places year after year after year and hanging out in the same areas. Now this third year in a row, right back down here to the Caribbean for the winter. So this shark did this for 3 years in a row, and over that time, you know, it traveled a long, long distance, but obviously knew exactly where it was and what it was doing. Cool thing about the site here is if you click on this blue dot right next to the name, we can learn a little bit more about this shark. So this particular shark was Harry Lindo. It was a boy. It was about 3 meters, so 9-10 feet long. It was tracked for 1,168 days, which is a little over 3 years, and traveled at least 27,000 miles over that time. And that's actually going to be quite a low number because it's only measuring the point to point to point at the surface when we got a good signal from the tag. And so it's actually traveling probably quite a bit more than that as it's swimming around, which is very, very cool to see. I just want to look at one more here, and then we can have a lot of time for questions. So let's go take a look at a Mako shark. Makos are an absolutely amazing shark. They're the fastest shark in the ocean. They can swim up to 50 to 60 miles an hour, so they can really move around. And what's very cool about this site is if you take a look at these names over here, some of them have this green flashing light. These are ones that we've heard from in the last 2 weeks. I told you that those tags, anytime they come to the surface, will send a signal. And so these guys are still actively sending us some information. And so just take a look at Andrea here up at the top. This Mako shark, this particular one, you can see stayed in a bit closer of an area. This tag went out, if we take a look at this, was tagged in March of this year. Of last year, and so has been almost tracked for almost a year, traveled about 5,000 miles over that time. But what's really cool is this big green dot right here. If we click on that, this is the last place we've heard from it. And when we pull this up, this is where we saw it yesterday. And so almost real time, we can see what these guys are doing and really get an idea. And what's great is you can look at this from home as well. So as we're learning about these sharks, you can be learning about them as well. So with that, I would love to hopefully step back and see if you guys have any questions.
All right. Awesome, Derek. Thanks so much. Really cool that the kids can follow along at home. So let's get started with, let's take some questions from our class in Vaughan, Ontario. I'm going to turn on your microphone so you can ask the questions.
So Jacob has a question. Read it, look into there, Jacob.
Hi, Jacob.
Hi.
How long?
How long do sharks stay alive for?
And how do
That is a great question.
Good.
So how long do they stay alive for? That is a really, really good question. There's a lot of different kinds of sharks, so it depends on what kind of shark it is we're talking about. But there was a study that was recently done with great white sharks and found that they can live to be 70 or 80 years old. So they can get pretty old, actually. Good question.
Okay. And Derek, can I just add to that question? How would you age a shark? What would you look for?
All right. So how would you age a shark? It's actually not really something you can do very well when they're alive. But if one dies, you can actually look at, if you've ever cut down a tree or seen the inside of a tree trunk, there's actually rings that are laid down every year that tree was alive. So you can go in, count the rings of the tree, and figure out how old it is. Sharks do something very similar in their spine, so in their backbone, in their vertebrae, they'll actually lay down growth rings like that as well. And so by doing a lot of different, by studying them and knowing exactly how many rings get put down every year, we can get a pretty good idea of how old that shark is. That's just one way to do it, but usually one of the better ones. Great question.
Okay, let's hear another question.
From us? Okay. Brooke.
I have a question.
It's not.
How many shark types are there?
And what size do they range from?
What size do they range from?
So how many different shark types are there? And what size do they range from?
All right, great question. That's the very cool thing about studying sharks is there's a lot of different kinds. There's over 500 different species of sharks out there. The smallest shark in the world is only about 8 inches long. So it's very, very, very small. And it goes all the way up to the biggest shark out there is the whale shark, and they can get up to about 40 or 50 feet long. So they're about the size of a school bus. And then the little guys are quite a bit, you could almost lay them on your arm and they'd fit right there pretty well. So they're very, very small.
Okay, and let's take one more question from Vaughn.
All right, Guido, come on over.
How many teeth do sharks have?
How many teeth do they have?
Cool. All right. So how many teeth do a shark have? That is a really, really good question. And I've actually got a jaw here I want to show you because the way sharks' teeth grow are very, very cool. So as you can see on the jaw here, they've got lots and lots of teeth on the top, lots and lots of teeth on the bottom. But what's really cool is if I open this up, or if I turn this around, what I'm going to show you is that right on the back side and inside their mouth, they've got rows and rows and rows and rows of teeth. It's usually between 5 to 7 rows, and so the reason they do that is that a shark obviously uses his mouth to catch his food, so he always wants to make sure he has really sharp teeth ready to go. So by having these different rows like this, what happens is when a shark breaks a tooth or loses a tooth, the next one's going to roll up and be ready to go about 1 day later. And so these guys go through a lot of teeth. Some sharks can have as many as 10 or 20,000 teeth over the course of their life. They make new teeth all of their life, so it's very, very cool to see kind of how they do that. Great question.
All right, grade ones, great questions.
Thanks.
We're going to jump to Honolulu, Hawaii right now, to our 9th grade physical science class. Do you have some questions for us?
Yeah. Can you see us?
I just lost your picture.
I don't know what happened.
That's okay, we can still hear you.
Okay, we got questions. Who has the first question? Gotta come up to the How do you feel about shark feeding tours? And do you feel that's good for sharks or not good for them?
All right, great question. So how do I feel about shark feeding tours? You know, this is a hard one to answer a little bit because there's a lot of different sides to that kind of question. So shark tourism, I think, is an absolutely amazing industry. I think it is very good for sharks, where people go out and are able to dive with sharks and see the sharks up close. As Joe said at the beginning of this, sharks have this sort of negative impact with the media and the movies and things like that, where sharks are made out to be these big, nasty, mean animals. But in reality, that's just not the case. And so I think for people to be able to get in and dive with sharks or snorkel with them, see them up close, I think is a huge benefit for sharks and for the people that get to see them. They are an amazing and incredibly important animal in our ecosystems or in our oceans. And so I think any way that we can have people learning about them and doing it safely is definitely a beneficial thing. Good question.
Okay. So you're just saying we lost your picture. I'm going to jump to the Super Shark Savers in Wyoming, and if you just want to try, just make sure maybe the video connection's still plugged in, or if you look in your top bar, the video may have been turned off accidentally. There is a button to turn camera on and off.
Yeah, we're pressing it.
Okay, and the connection's still good in the side of the computer as well?
Yeah, our connection's good. We got a message that Shark4Kids turned it off.
Okay, let's try. Any change?
Nope. Nope.
Okay.
No. It's okay. We can see you guys. We can hear you.
Okay. Do you want to continue with the questions then?
Okay. Next question. Coming.
Are sharks smart?
All right. Are sharks smart? That's a great question. I think I think that we can look even to some of this tagging stuff to answer some of that. When you look at a shark that's not very big, when you're looking at the size of the ocean, for these guys to know where they're going, they definitely are pretty smart in that regards. They've got a great sense of direction, where they are, what they're doing. There have been studies where they've actually been able to teach sharks different things, so that we know that they can have, they can actually learn. so one of the early shark studies sort of put a colored block. If they hit that block, they would get a bit of food, and so they actually learned that they could go hit that button and go back and they would get a treat for it. So they are definitely able to learn, and they've been around for about 400 million years. So I think they're doing pretty well. They're very good at what they do, and like I said, are an amazing and important part of our ecosystems.
Okay, great answer, Derek. You have another question?
Oh, okay, one more.
What is the biggest threat to shark populations?
All right, what's the biggest threat to shark populations? Unfortunately, that's us. That's human beings. Like I said, we're killing over 100 million sharks every year around the world. That is just a huge number. We do use people use sharks for a lot of things. They eat the meat. Unfortunately, shark fins get used for a lot of things. I've got a couple of shark fins that were actually confiscated because they were trying to send them illegally into the United States. A lot of the work that we do with genetics, we can take a little piece of this fin, figure out what kind of shark it is, and in some cases we can even figure out where it was caught. But with this fin, people put it in things like shark fin soup. And I've actually got another fin here. This is what the fin looks like when you take the skin off. And so shark's fins are made almost entirely of cartilage. And so when we talk about shark fin soup, this is what you're getting. It's just this real stringy stuff in there. It has no flavor, but unfortunately, people eat a lot of it around the world. And so, I'd say the biggest threat right now is definitely human beings for the sharks. Great question.
Okay. Derek, I'm going to give you a couple questions I have coming in live from the event page. So, first one is I have some questions from some first graders in Lake Havasu, Arizona. So their first question is, do sharks eat other sharks?
All right. So do sharks eat other sharks? That's a great question. And actually, yeah, they do. Sharks are fish like anything else, with over 500 different kinds of them out there. Sometimes bigger sharks will eat little sharks for food. Sometimes if even a big shark gets sick or injured, other sharks might eat it because it is a great source of food for them as well. Good question.
Okay, and they have a follow-up. Are there any shark species that eat jellyfish?
Are there any shark species that eat jellyfish? That's a great question. So, like I said, there's a lot of different kinds of sharks out there. They eat lots and lots of different kinds of food, all the way, up to the whale shark, which is a filter feeder, which means it's filtering little tiny things out of the water. And so, those guys would probably get some jellyfish in that food. I'm not aware of many that sort of focus only on jellyfish. There are some animals that do. For instance, the leatherback sea turtle feeds on almost all jellyfish. They go after some of the really big ones out there. But as far as sharks go, they might get eaten amongst other things, but I don't know any sharks without looking that eat only jellyfish. So, good question.
Okay. Jumping to Illinois, I have another question that's come in. This is from a grade 5 class, and they were wondering, how does tagging the shark affect them? Is it positive, negative? How do they feel?
All right, so how do they feel when we put a tag on? So I've got my little hammerhead shark right here, which has got our roto tag in it, which is the one with the numbers on it. You can see these are quite small tags, and when most of the sharks we're dealing with are pretty big. And if we go back to my shark fin here, this is all cartilage. And so, people ask a lot, does it hurt the shark or anything like that? We don't really think so. We're going to put a hole in there. It's probably a lot like getting an ear pierced. It's just going through this cartilage. There's very little blood that flows through this area, so it's not like when we put the tag on, it doesn't really bleed or anything like that. And so, and the sharks go right back to doing what they were doing before. Even putting on some of the bigger tags and even things like cameras and things like that, they pretty quickly go right back to what they were doing. So we don't think it affects them negatively too much. So, good question.
Okay. I'm going to move to Wyoming now, and we're going to connect with the Super Shark Savers, and they have a couple questions for us.
All right.
Hi, Super Shark Savers. How are ya?
Good. How are you?
Good. You have some questions for Dr. Derek?
Yes. Why do most sharks live only in the ocean?
All right. So why do most sharks live only in the ocean? And that's because sharks are actually fish. We call them cartilaginous fish because unlike a lot of the fish that are out there, they don't have any bones in their body at all. All of their bones are made of, they've got cartilage that makes up their whole skeleton. So they don't have any bones, but they are fish, and they breathe through gills, which means that they actually have to live in the water to be able to get that oxygen out of the water. If they come up on land, they won't be able to breathe, and they'll die pretty quickly. So they spend pretty much their entire lives in the water and are pretty happy doing so. Great question.
Thanks.
Okay. Do you have another one for us?
One more. What can we do to help sharks if we don't live near the ocean?
All right, that's a great question. And probably, there's a few very great things you can do. One, and I'm very happy you're here to learn a little bit more about sharks today, because one of the best things you can do is you can tell other people about some of the stuff that you learned today. You can tell them sort of how important sharks are, why they're good to have in our waters, and why we don't really want to kill so many of them. And another big thing is you can be careful with what you buy. If people stop using all the things that we make out of sharks, then maybe we wouldn't be killing so many of them. So not eating things like shark fin soup, or there's a lot of places where you wouldn't even think that sharks would be used, but in lotions and makeups and things like that, sometimes shark cartilage gets used in those products. So if you take a look at those, and just try to be careful when you're buying and things like that to make sure you're not buying shark products. Great question.
Thank you.
All right. Those are some great questions. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
All right, Derek, I have a few questions that have come in as well. I've got a question from Mrs. Willinger's class in landlocked Indiana. And they want to know if it's possible to train a shark. So are there any learned behaviors that sharks can learn, can do?
So, is it possible to train a shark? That's a little bit of a hard one to answer, but going back to some of those early studies, we do know that they can learn. They can, like in that first study that I talked about, where they can actually go up to a colored block or a colored target, they can push that target with their nose, and they know they're going to get food out of it. And so they can actually learn that red circle means food, and so they'll go back over and over and over again to get that free food. So they're definitely able to learn. And there's also some really amazing research out there that shows sort of how social and things like that, some of these, especially things like lemon sharks and some other species are, where they interact with each other and may learn from each other quite regularly. So, good question.
Okay. And then from Mrs. Richardson's kindergarten class in Washington, how is it possible to pet or feed a shark without getting bit?
All right. Is it possible to pet or feed a shark without getting bit? That's something you're always going to want to be very, very, very careful with. I don't recommend petting or feeding a shark like that. They are a wild animal. Some of them are very, very big, and they're pretty much all very strong. And so I recommend, if you're lucky enough to see them, to sort of sit back and just enjoy what you're able to see. You can watch them swim around. They're just beautiful animals to see in the water. But anytime you start bothering them, whether it's trying to feed them or pet them or something like that, just like a dog on the street, you probably wouldn't run up and try to play with every single dog you see on the street, because some of them may not like that very much. And so I definitely recommend not feeding, because once they start eating, they'll want to want to go after that, and sometimes they're very, very, very fast. And so I would recommend, not touching or feeding the animals, but if you do get to see them, enjoy it and love the time that you get to spend with them.
Okay. This is a fairly topical question, especially with Discovery Channel and Shark Week. This comes from the grade 5 class in Illinois again. Do you believe in Megalodon?
All right. So do I believe in Megalodon? For those of you who don't know, Megalodon is one of the biggest, probably the biggest shark that's ever been on Earth that we really know of. They were probably shaped, we guess, probably a little bit like a great white shark, but really we only know that because we've found their fossilized teeth. And so, there have been some stories recently about Megalodon and how they might be real. They were definitely real. They were a shark, but they are an extinct shark now, which means there's no more on Earth. They're not lurking out there somewhere. They are definitely an extinct species. But like I said, we've been able to learn a little bit about them from finding their teeth and things like that, which is how we know how big they were, because some of their teeth might be almost as big as my hand, and so we know that they were a really, really big shark, but definitely extinct and not around anymore. Great question.
Okay. We have Mrs. Zelmer's class. They're a first grade class in Wisconsin, and they're wondering if sharks have an important job to do in the ocean. What is their special job?
All right. That is one of the most important questions you can ask, and I'm glad you did. So sharks absolutely have a job in our oceans. So, a lot of the sharks, like I said, there's over 500 different species out there, so there's a lot of different kinds, but a lot of sharks are sort of at the top of the food chain, which means that they eat lots and lots of different things in our oceans. And sharks really are important to help keep everything balanced. And the reason I say that is if you start taking sharks and some of these other apex predators out of the oceans or out of the areas where they live, all those things that they were eating, they were helping to keep their populations or their numbers sort of at an even level. And so when you take the sharks away, then those numbers might get really, really big, which means everything that those fish or whatever that is were eating, now the stuff that they eat are going to go down very, very quickly. And so they are very important. They do help balance and regulate our oceans. And when you start taking sharks out of an area, those reefs and those areas might start dying or really having a lot of trouble. So, yeah, they're very, very important in the areas where they live, and that's why we're doing all this research and things to try to help keep them there for a lot longer. Good question.
Okay. I'm going to move back to some of the classes joining us live just to see if they have any more questions for us just based on the lesson so far. So I'm going to go back to Honolulu, Hawaii for a moment and connect with our 9th grader. How's it going over there?
Okay, we're good. We're still here.
All right. Do you have any more questions for us?
Yeah,
for Dr.
yeah,
Derek?
we do. What are the most common sharks in warm waters?
All right. So what are the most common sharks in Hawaii? Is that the question?
Yes, that's the question.
Okay. Good question. There are sharks in every ocean around the world, so it's always very cool to see what's living in certain areas around the world. There's actually quite a good diversity of sharks around Hawaii. You get a lot of because of all your coral reefs, you do get a number of reef species. So you got gray reef sharks, black tip and white tip reef sharks. And you also get things, you got a very big population of things like tiger sharks and the scalloped and smooth hammerheads and sandbars and some other smaller sharks as well. And if you move out to places like the Northwest Hawaiian Islands, so get a little bit further away, you can start finding things like Galapagos sharks as well out there. So you guys have a great around Hawaii, and there's been a lot of amazing research on sharks done around there.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Do you have maybe one more for us?
Okay.
What do you do when a shark is swimming towards you?
All right. So if you're in the water and you have a shark swimming towards you, usually what you're going to want to do is you want to stay relaxed. You want to keep your eye on the shark. There's been some research showing that sharks are pretty lazy in a lot of cases. They don't really have to ever work for what they're trying to do. And so if you keep a good eye on them, make sure you watch them and watch what they're doing. Generally, I would say you just stay relaxed and stay facing them. If they do get close to you or something like that, you might be able to just stick, if you're snorkeling or diving, you might be able to just stick your fin up in the water in front of you and sort of wave it around or something like that to try to make them back off if you're worried about it. Good question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Let's check back in with our class in Ontario, Canada.
Yeah, we have
grade 1.
We have one more question.
Sure.
Zach, why don't you read into the...
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
How do sharks hunt and attack?
All right, so how do they hunt in a pack? Actually, most sharks live mostly on their own. They're pretty solitary. There are a few species that might spend more time in groups, but most of the time they're going to be feeding and traveling around primarily on their own. There are certainly exceptions to that, especially if you get something like a really big some sort of food source, whether it be a whale that dies or something like that. In those cases, you might have a lot of sharks that come together to feed on that great big hunk of meat that's there because it's such an easy and good bit of food for them. But they don't really hunt in packs for the most part. They're going to, they do most of that stuff on their own. Good question.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's check in with our super savers in Wyoming, our shark super savers. Hi.
Hello.
Do you have another question for us, for Derek?
No.
No?
Nothing else? Answered everything?
Okay, that's okay.
Perfect.
I do have a couple questions here from a grade 1 class. Let's see. The first one was from Jaylyn, and she's wondering, how long does it take for a shark to grow to full size?
All right. So how long does it take for a shark to grow to full size? Sharks actually will grow throughout their whole life. They'll always keep getting bigger, and so if you want to talk about maybe how long it takes for them to get to where they can start having babies or something like that, a lot of those for a lot of species is maybe around 10 to 20 years sometimes. So they are pretty slow growing, but sharks do continue to grow throughout their whole life. So good question.
Okay. And so that was from a grade 1 class. That was from Mr. Ostomer's grade 1 class.
All right.
Sage is also in that class, and she's wondering, how sharp is a shark's tooth?
All right. Well, sharks' teeth are very, very, very sharp. I do have this little jaw right here, and even though these are, have been out here for a while, they're still very sharp. And the reason that is because, sharks don't have hands like we do. If we want to get something for food, we'll go pick it up, take a look at it, figure out what it is, figure out how we want to eat it. For a shark, pretty much all they have is their teeth, and so they want to make sure they've got those really nice, very, very sharp teeth, be able to catch and eat that food pretty easily. And like we talked about before, with all those rows and rows and rows of teeth back here, they can keep those teeth sharp throughout their whole life because they're always making new ones. So, good question.
Okay. Another question from the grade 5 class in Illinois. They're wondering why sharks are attracted to blood.
Good question. So sharks are attracted to blood pretty much because blood means there's something there for them to eat. And so, just like, something grilling out in the afternoon for us, if we smell a hamburger on a grill, we might go towards that smell because we know that that's going to be a nice, juicy hamburger for us to have for dinner. For a shark, smelling blood or something like that means that there's a fish or something there that might make a nice meal for them. Good question.
Okay. So Derek, I was curious about shark tags. How much does one of the satellite tags cost that you use when you tag the sharks?
All right, that's a great question. So, I do have both those kinds of tags that we talked about, the pop-off tag and the spot tag, which are the ones that stay on the fin and send information every time they come to the surface. These things are actually quite expensive. They run around $2,000 a piece, but then we also have to pay for the time to use the satellite to send us all that information back. So the total cost changes a little bit depending on how often they come to the surface, but right around $3,000 is what it costs to put one of these tags out and get the information back. Good question.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Screen was frozen for a moment. So we are running close to 2 o'clock. Thank you so much to everybody who tuned in to visit with us today. This is our first Google Plus Hangout, and we plan on organizing one each month with a different marine scientist. So stay tuned to find out who will be next month. So mid-February, very soon we'll announce who it will be for that event. Please check out the links on the side, Sharks4Kids.com. You can follow us on Twitter, YouTube, Google+, for all your latest news and updates. Also, this event recorded live to YouTube, so if you want to share with anybody else or check back for some of the answers to the questions, you can always do that at any time. And we're going to check in one more time just to say goodbye to our classes who joined us. Goodbye and thank you. Let's say hi to the Super Shark Savers.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
All right. Great questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to Hawaii. How are we doing over there?
We're good. Sorry we lost our camera, but we're still here.
That's okay. Your questions were great, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And close to me, only an hour away in Vaughan. Grade 1s, how are ya?
Good. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks for joining us today. You guys had awesome questions.
Thank you.
All right. As well, you can always book a lesson for your class with Derek or someone else from the Sharks4Kids team by sending a message to sharks4kids@gmail.com. Again, take a look at the showcase for some links. And thank you so much for tuning in today for our first Hangout. We had a lot of fun. Derek, thank you so much.
Absolutely. It was great to talk to everybody and loved hearing all the great questions. Thanks for tuning in.
Okay. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.